Hey everybody, James Brierton here with you in Charlotte. In just a minute, we are going to get a belated edition of the Carolina Weather Group going for this Wednesday, May the 8th, 2024. We're going to talk about the line of severe storms that came through earlier today, the line of severe storms that we can expect to see overnight, and the possibility that yet a third line could come during your early morning commute. So stay tuned. We're going to get rocking and rolling right here on the Carolina Weather Group. And welcome to a special edition of the Carolina Weather Group. I'm James Brierton in Charlotte. And we're going to do things a little bit differently here tonight as we're continuing to track the severe weather threat that is impacting the Carolinas throughout the overnight hours. That's right. Don't let your guard down. Just because we had one line of severe storms doesn't mean that we are done. Matter of fact, we've got at least one, maybe two more lines of severe weather working through the Carolinas during the overnight hours. We are already into a slight risk for portions of North Carolina and South Carolina. This is the western half of the state, so the I-77 corridor to the east throughout much of the overnight. And then you'll notice that shifts, that slight risk then shifts essentially from I-77 to the east by the time we get to 6, 7, 8 a.m. tomorrow. We even have an enhanced risk for portions of, say, the Hilton Head area as you start making your way down towards the greater Savannah, Georgia metro area. For tomorrow, an enhanced risk is a tier 3 out of 5. And that's what we had in parts of the Carolinas today. Believe it or not, it is not impossible. It's not a never, but it is certainly a rarity that we get one of these enhanced risks, tier 3 out of 5 from the Storm Prediction Center. And that's what we saw late in the day added for places like Greenville, Spartanburg, South Carolina. Rock Hill would be a part of that too. And also in Charlotte, in Statesville, Hickory, and in Asheville. So right now, I want to kind of set the stage for you on what you can expect out of me here in the next few minutes. It's just me. There's no guests. There's no other hosts. That's kind of a little bit of what happens when severe weather impacts the Carolinas. Frankly speaking, we all have day jobs in weather, and this is a show about weather. This is a show we want to bring you religiously every Wednesday night. I appreciate you being with me an hour later than usual tonight. And I do want to take your questions because I want to help make sure that you are set up for success as we go through the overnight hours. So it's you and I having a conversation tonight. So if you have questions for me, just like Rodney has put in about Rutherford County, we'll talk about that in a minute. You can go ahead and put those into the chat on Facebook, YouTube, wherever it is you may be watching. If you're listening to this audio podcast later, I love you very, very much. And all the information I'm about to give you is probably going to be old by the time you listen to this. So if you do skip this one, it's okay. We can still be friends. I appreciate your diligence. So let's recap a little bit of what happened today on Wednesday. And then we'll talk a little bit about what we can expect as we go through the rest of the overnight hours. I'm happy to answer as many questions as I possibly can. Some of them we may not know yet, and I'll try to explain why as we go on through. But again, we did have that rare enhanced risk for portions of the Carolinas today, that tier 3 out of 5. I can't tell you the last time we had one of these. It maybe happens once a year. And it was because of the amount of potent energy that was available today in the atmosphere, which meant that not only were we looking for the possibility of severe winds, which we did get plenty of, and the possibility of hail, which very much did verify, but we did still have a small tornado chance. And you notice the tornado chance is actually the smallest there. And I think that's key because especially as we go through the overnight hours, we're again not talking too much about tornadoes. We're talking mostly about severe winds. But I want to drill home the point that whether the wind is rotating in a funnel as it would in a tornado or is coming at you in a thunderstorm, wind is wind and can be devastating. Think about Rock Hill, South Carolina a few weeks ago. I know many of us might still be convinced that a tornado happened, and I'm not here to tell you that you're wrong, but I'm here to tell you that that is a perfect example of how devastating thunderstorm winds can be, regardless of whether or not it was a tornado. And we're not here to take that away from you. We're here to just really convey to you that in the middle of the night, if you get a severe thunderstorm warning, it is time to take cover, especially if it is your phone that wakes you up, because you will only be getting those alerts on your phone in the most dire of situations. Most of your thunderstorm warnings only come to your phone if you have an app. But if you get an emergency wireless alert, then something extra special is happening, and that is a situation that you would also want to treat like a tornado by moving to shelter if that were to happen in the middle of the night. Did we get any of those today? I don't think we quite reached the 80-mile-per-hour threshold to activate the wireless emergency alert, but we did get considerable thunderstorms. Remember, severe thunderstorms come in 3 tiers. The base tier is 60-mile-per-hour winds, quarter-size hail, hail size of a quarter, so 1 inch. And then we have considerable, which is like a tier 2, and that is 70-mile-per-hour winds. And then destructive is tier 3. That's when the wireless emergency alert is going to go off for a thunderstorm. So here's a look right now, if you're watching along with me, on where we saw those severe thunderstorm warnings today. They're in yellow. And you can see they stretch right from the mountains in western North Carolina. They came across the Tennessee border. They marched right through Asheville. We're going to come back to that in a minute. Right down through Charlotte and out to the coast. And many of you saw the spectacular wall cloud that came with that. I'll show you that picture in a moment too. And you can also see what the takeaway of this was. It's a lot of yellow polygons that verified because we got a lot of thunderstorm wind damage. Gaston County, North Carolina took it among the hardest. They have no school tomorrow because they have so many power lines and trees down across the area. They did unfortunately have at least 1 storm fatality in Gaston County. You'll notice there's only 1 red polygon for tornado warnings, and that was a part of the rotation that came through portions of Gaston County. We'll show you part of that shelf cloud here in just a moment. And also notice a lot of hail. A lot of hail earlier in the day when we have the most energy available. But let's talk for a minute, if we can, about what Asheville saw. Because Asheville, if you are watching right now from Asheville, then man, you probably have some hail to remember. 3-inch size hail here north of Asheville. Asheville proper getting egg size hail. That's 2-inch size hail damaging 22 cars in Asheville, which is an outstanding storm report. And probably a lot more than 22 cars were damaged in Asheville today. But that is just an example of how powerful these storms were. Again, you can also see lots of reports of trees down. And you can see this really stretch right on through that state border region from North Carolina to South Carolina. I'm going to stop the screen share here for a minute, and I'm going to switch to a couple other screen shares because I've kind of teased you guys on a whole lot of visuals that I want to show you. Loyal viewers will probably remember my day job is in television with WCNC Television. And so we had our own meteorologist, KJ Jacobs, out today in Gaston County, again, one of the hardest hit areas. And you can see the storm damage here in portions of Gaston County. This is in Gastonia. This is North Chester Street at Radio Road. The power pole snapped in half. The top part of that power pole is actually kind of like gouged into the roof here of this building. And not only did it topple over power lines, not only did it snap this one power line, but it flipped over a car and snapped other trees in half. So you have the same question I have probably right now. What caused this? Well, I can tell you from looking at terminal radar indicated winds. They had at least 60, at least 70 mile per hour winds in this portion of Gastonia. Was this a tornado? Maybe. The thing that we look for, that is the tall tale sign of a tornado, is wind damage that is kind of scattered about with trees falling in multiple directions. Because again, remember, tornado twist, right? 360 degrees. So you're getting winds going out 360 degrees. So one tree falls to the left, and the tree falls to the right, so on and so forth. If all of these trees fall in the same direction, then it's still severe thunderstorm wind. But it probably didn't come from a tornado, and probably came more from a thunderstorm. So we'll find out if the Weather Service plans to go on out there and take a look at it. And if they do, they will try to determine exactly what caused it, because they want to know, they want to learn, they want to make sure we have all of the necessary information that is available to us. But you can kind of just, again, get the idea of, here's even more pictures that some of you guys sent into Brad Panovich there at WCNC of the same location. You can see, the front of the building, a sign just broken in multiple pieces, an interstate sign, if you will. And this is just one location. So there are numerous locations that look similar to this. This is one I think of probably the most visual or hardest hit areas. That was just kind of really sticks in my mind. There's obviously lots of pictures that you guys have sent in from across the Carolinas of trees down, trees down, trees down. At one point today at work, I was trying to write down where all the down trees were, and that was just an impossible task because it would have been easier for me to tell you where the down trees weren't. Never mind where were the down trees. So here's a look at that shelf cloud. This is that shelf cloud that was associated with this leading line of storms. The first round of storms that came on through, and many of you saw this. You didn't have to be in Lancaster or in Charlotte to see this, right? Because this was the storm as it pushed from Tennessee into North Carolina into South Carolina. It was a memorable storm to definitely see, and it was impressive to see. We even have some mammatus clouds over the Waverly area here in Charlotte, a telltale sign that severe weather is happening in the atmosphere. But the last thing I think I teased for you guys was that cloud, right? That shelf cloud that I just showed you. We had quite an incredible picture. I'm going to Tim Buckley's Twitter now because I know he screen grabbed Brad standing in front of, here it is, the WCNC tower camera, which is about 1,500 feet up on the transmitter tower in Dallas, North Carolina, which is in northern Gaston County, just to the west of Charlotte. And you can actually almost see at eye level then from that camera's perspective as the storm is coming right on at you. And I can't even tell you how many people I saw a screenshot and post this online today. It is a remarkable camera. Okay, so in a minute, we're going to talk a little bit about what we can expect overnight. I know many of you are still picking up tree branches, maybe furniture, maybe some hail damage on your car from Asheville through Charlotte out towards Myrtle Beach, or on Scotty Powell out there in Myrtle Beach. Saw things. I'm going to pause here for a moment, talk a little bit about some of your questions that are coming in last time to me here. We got Frank Strait is just in time for Q&A. Frank, you look very comfy, so welcome to this very serious topic, but very chill conversational edition of the Carolina Weather Group. You're on the road. We'll ask you about that here in just a moment, but the first question I already popped up onto the screen was there a tornado touchdown in Rutherford County? There is no confirmed touchdowns of any tornadoes right now, but I think it's something that people will be assessing. The National Weather Service will make the official determination on A, where they need to go, and B, what caused damage tomorrow. But we did have some very impressive storms, Frank, particularly over western North Carolina.
We sure did. All over the place, close to the North and South Carolina line this afternoon. There was just these widespread storms. And yes, there were some rotations in them, but the conditions weren't really favorable for tornadoes to happen because, number one, the cloud bases were high. That usually does not lend to us seeing tornadoes. And also the shear was that leads to the supercells forming was not close to the ground. It was really only occurring well aloft. And in those situations, you don't typically see tornadoes. You can see supercells. And when you do see supercells in those situations, you have a tendency to get a lot of hail, as was evidenced with that storm that hit Rock Hill back on April 20th. That was a supercell, but the conditions were otherwise similar to what we saw today. So this one of those situations where probably wasn't a tornado, but I can't definitively say it wasn't either.
Yeah, not too much activity, as Frank said, with regards to tornado activity today on Wednesday. And then kind of the same thing as we go through the overnight hours. We can already see from the Storm Prediction Center that as we this is always so confusing, right, Frank? So here's the day one. This is the today outlook, which goes until about 8 a.m. So I-77 off to the west, we have the slight risk. And those really break down to, and this is for the rest of the night. This isn't backwards. This is still to come. We have a pretty significant tornado threat over Tennessee. It's close. Our next door neighbor's getting it. But then it really drops down to 5% or less for most of us as we go through the overnight hours. The wind threat higher at about 15%, the hail threat being the same. Then as we go into tomorrow, and by tomorrow, we just mean after 8 a.m. So this is really the continuation of the morning hour on Thursday. That slight risk with portions of an enhanced risk in the far southern areas of South Carolina continues. And that is almost virtually for a non-existent tornado threat, 2% or less, not zero, but 2% or less, 15% chance of winds for most of us, a 30% chance of winds if you're down in that Hilton Head, kind of Savannah, Georgia area where the enhanced risk is. And that's also where the greatest threat of hail will be. So all of that, I guess, Frank, to continue to say, if your weather radio is only set up to wake you up in the middle of the night for tornado warnings and not severe thunderstorm warnings, this might be a night to opt in to get to those severe thunderstorm warnings. Because all of the damage, at least most of the damage that we saw today and that we saw in Rock Hill, South Carolina, as Frank alluded to just a couple of weeks ago, that was purely for severe thunderstorm warned storms. And so if you live in a place where you need to take action in the middle of the night when winds start howling at 60, 70, 80 miles an hour, tonight is one of those nights.
Yeah, this is, and the thing that concerns me, what part of the reason I jumped on here, James, is that just looking at the latest round of computer models that just came in, it's starting to look like the damaging wind and tornado threat is starting to increase for the upstate as we go into the overnight hours. I'm becoming increasingly concerned about these storms getting really bad over parts of upstate South Carolina, and maybe western North Carolina too, for that matter. This is a very challenging situation, a very difficult forecast here, as we often do see with these thunderstorm outbreaks in the springtime. It's like everything gets affected by just the slightest error in data going into the models. If it's if we don't have this perfect initialization, as we call it, and we never do. So there's always some sort of error that goes in. As a result, the computer model output is never perfect. But just looking at the setup right now, I am getting a little more concerned that we'll see some damaging storms and potentially even some tornadoes over the Western Carolinas late tonight, starting around midnight. I guess maybe earlier for far western North Carolina. But it's a concern, and you'll definitely want to have multiple ways to be alerted, not just the weather radio, not just your phone, but whatever else you could come up with too, something that can wake you up in the middle of the night. Keep the phone right next to your bed and have that weather radio configured to wake you up. Although I have the feeling these storms are going to be loud too, with the lightning and thunder that they're going to generate. I have the feeling they're going to wake you up. So it might be a good night to go ahead and hit the sack as soon as we're done here with Carolina Weather Group. Maybe buy yourself an extra 30 minutes of sleep tonight, because if you live in the Western Carolinas and maybe over more of the Carolinas too, I get the feeling that one way or another, you're going to be woke up tonight. Hopefully by, if it's a severe storm or tornado headed your way, hopefully by the weather radio or whatever, or your phone or whatever other alerting mechanism you have. But if not that, the thunder is probably going to wake you up. James, I'm not hearing you. Are you muted?
How about now? You'll have to put up two with me. This is the HRRR model run for 1 a.m. That's the time frame we're looking at right now on the screen. As Frank said, the storms will begin in western North Carolina after midnight or about midnight, when they once again cross in from Tennessee. And then as we kind of progress this, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., you can see them right here in the Charlotte area. And again, to Frank's point, very strong, very severe, and potentially rotating, not only in Charlotte, but also along the I-85 corridor in upstate South Carolina and into portions of the Triad. And then, so let's see here. That's
back it up to 1 a.m., James.
Okay, back it up to 1 a.m.
Yeah, because
All right.
I want to
I think
point
that's
out
going to
something
be.
on that
Go ahead.
1 a.m. time step or
All
midnight to
right.
1 a.m. Either one. Notice
Yeah, yeah.
how you have the main squall line that's back over Tennessee, uh, and then you have these individual what we call discrete thunderstorm cells popping up over sort of like the I-26 corridor there, and back
Okay.
over toward Clemson and Anderson, and back into
Yeah.
North Georgia there. Those are the ones that, if this actually does work out, those are the ones that I'm worried about have the potential to put down some tornadoes overnight.
To emphasize what you're saying, the discrete ones that have room to do whatever they want because they're not smushed up against anybody else.
Precisely, there's nothing bothering them. They're not congealed into a squall line, so the rotations aren't getting disrupted. They have all the energy available, the atmosphere available to them, not being absorbed by any other storms. Although you can see there's a scattering there, but as these individual thunderstorm cells have a greater potential to become supercells.
Yeah,
And
we saw
so
some of
they
that today.
have a much greater potential to produce not only tornadoes but also the damaging wind and large hail.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's see what becomes of those discrete cells as we work our way on through the overnight hours. So here now, again, about 1 a.m., we will take it to about 4 a.m. You can see the line now has worked its way into upstate South Carolina, Charlotte, Triad. We'll take it now to, let's see, this is going to be about 12Z. So that's 7 a.m. So this is probably the time where a lot of you are going out to the school bus, maybe beginning to head out for work. And so there, it's kind of, you can see it right here. The computer model really wants to do two lines in the morning. So a total of 3 lines, right? We had one this afternoon. We're going to have one that starts after midnight. And then we're going to have another one that starts like after 6 a.m., kind of on the tail of the second one. So don't be fooled if you go to leave your house at 7 a.m. If you're like me and you live in Matthews or in Southern Charlotte and you're like, hey, the storm's cleared out. Great, I'm going to go. There's another line coming that you're going to run into during that morning rush hour. I mean, matter of fact, it's going to be socking Atlanta here, right at 7 o'clock in the morning. So you're going to have one line that's still marching off towards the coast and potentially another line that's coming in behind it. I mean, Frank, you were talking a minute ago about model runs, consistencies, biases, whether or not something kind of sticks into the model run after run after run after run. It's been very consistent on having this third line. And I keep going, what energy is it going to have left? But it's insistent that there's going to be a third line.
Right, and if you look at a wide-angle view of weather radar composite, you can see that next line of thunderstorms. It's already going back there over that's over back in Arkansas and yeah, the Arkansas, Missouri, and down to the Arklatex region right now. That's just going to race across the southeastern states overnight, and we'll end up over the Western Carolinas tomorrow morning, not long after daybreak.
So here's what I'm lovingly calling line 2.
Yes.
And this is the one that's going to come into the Carolinas, the mountains of North Carolina and upstate South Carolina shortly after midnight. This is the overnight one. And then to emphasize what Frank was just talking about, as we go even further off to the east, you can see we do have, in reality, it does exist. That third line is out there. And both sets of lines right now, even at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, have warnings associated with them of all varieties.
Right. So, and you know, the wild cards here are partly the storms we already had earlier today that we have leftover outflow boundaries from that have the potential to generate some shear in the atmosphere. That's a bit of a wild card. And then the second line of storms, how that ends up behaving and where that ends up tomorrow morning, you know, the exact details with that will partially influence how the third round that's back over Arkansas and Texas and Oklahoma right now, how that will behave when it gets to the Carolinas tomorrow. So the forecast, while we have a general idea of what's going to happen at this point, we don't know all the specifics at this point. So You will want to stay in touch. You will want to check the forecast first thing when you wake up, whether it's caused by thunder at 2 or 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. or whether it's 6:45 when you usually wake up and your alarm goes off. You'll want to check the weather and the forecast right then, because there is the potential for changes as we go through the next several hours.
Let me switch back over to the HRRR computer model and pick back up our timeline. So this is again about 7 a.m. and you can see we have two lines, one in eastern North Carolina, one along I-95 in South Carolina, and that third line then coming into the western half of both the Carolinas. So as we then progress over the next couple hours, this is 7, here's 8 o'clock over Charlotte, 9 o'clock coming into Columbia, and then as we start getting into 10, 11, 12, it does eventually move out. So by the time you get to the afternoon, the atmosphere has been pretty worked over. You can see, yes, we might get one discrete little shower, maybe a heavy little pocket of rain, but it's mostly scattered. And that's kind of the case as we go through the rest of Thursday into Friday, with maybe the exception if you are watching from Savannah or Hilton Head on this particular model run. But you can see, for the most part, we do get some relief. At least that's the Charlotte perspective in me, because we've got the Wells Fargo Championship for the PGA Tour, and they're very much looking forward to, after tomorrow's delayed start, which has already been put on the books, they're looking forward to hopefully getting the rest of this in without too much interruption. As we start getting out later towards Friday and Saturday, the weather, Frank, it's warming up. It's warming up. So we'll get into those afternoon showers and thunderstorms. But I think in terms of severe weather, we've got round 1 done. Round 2 knocking on our door right now is just a county or two away from coming into North Carolina. And then round 3 in the morning. And by the time you get to lunch tomorrow, every meteorologist you know in the area is going to be either asleep or chugging caffeine, I think.
Right. Yeah, I think there will be a lot of caffeine consumed by meteorologists over the next 24 to 48 hours here.
Yeah.
And like I said, lots of variables. And the models, at least the newest HRRR, the HER model run, shows stuff moving offshore by midday tomorrow. If it ends up truly moving that fast, then we have to turn our eyes back to the mountains again in the afternoon, because with the sun out and it's still pretty warm and humid, then we run the risk of having more storms pop up over the mountains and North Georgia, and maybe giving us, probably not severe, but still maybe a couple thunderstorms in that area in the afternoon and evening tomorrow. And then another disturbance going to come through possibly as early as the wee morning hours of Thursday, or Friday rather, but more likely toward daybreak and beyond on Friday. And that could also, at least for parts of South Carolina, particularly the Low Country, be yet another round of severe storms from that. And hopefully once we get that out of the way, we get a break for the weekend. And Saturday and Sunday, we get some decent weather, maybe Monday as well, before it turns stormy again as early as Tuesday next week.
Hey, it's that time of year, right? It's like whether we like it or not, the 90s and the summer is here. Frank, I think we have time for 2 more questions as we come up from the 30-minute mark of this special edition of Carolina Weather Group. Tucker, watching on X, wants to know, what do you think round 2 tonight will be like for Charlotte? I can't rule out the chance for a tornado. I'm most concerned about wind and power lines. I think a lot of us might wake up in the morning without power, which may not be a problem at 3 o'clock in the morning when people are on the roads. But Tucker, if you're like me, I live here in Charlotte with you, we got to be careful when we hit the roads tomorrow, because there could be down trees and power lines that need to be cleared from neighborhood streets and from roads before we can all get out there. That's going to take more time, and we got to be careful, because if a wire's down, you never know if it's live. Question from YouTube. What is a gustnado? And this question, I think, stems from a social media video, Frank. I don't know if you've seen this yet, but I'm going to go back to Brad's Twitter account, because we saw this today.
I saw that.
Yeah, in, I thought it was Gaston, but this might actually be Charlotte. And you can kind of just see it off there in the back. Just watch for it here. There it is. And you can kind of see swirling of winds, right? Swirling of winds. So gustnado. It's a gust, but it's not a tornado. So what does that really mean there is an official National Weather Service definition. I'm going to read it because I know it's small on the screen. A gustnado is a small whirlwind which forms as an eddy in a thunderstorm outflow. They do not connect with any cloud-based rotation and are not tornadoes. Tornadoes must both touch the clouds and the ground. Since their origin is associated with cubiform clouds, gustnadoes will be classified as thunderstorm wind events, like dust devils. Some stronger gustnadoes can cause damage. So again, there is that theme, Frank, that things other than tornadoes can cause legitimate damage. And
right, and you may recall if you were here with us, we were talking about the Rock Hill tornado. Brad was with us for that show, and it's one of the things I brought up that even in severe thunderstorms, especially along the leading edge of thunderstorm outflow, we have a tendency to get these little eddies form, and that would explain the swirling motion that some people in Rock Hill said they saw when that storm moved through back on April 20th. And the stronger ones are almost tornado-like and can cause damage, and those are the ones we call gustnadoes. But they're not true tornadoes, and they're not classified that way. And when we see that in a damage survey, even though the wind is even though the damage might be characteristic of a tornado, it's not classified as one because it's just not what happened. It's one of these gustnadoes instead. And again, it's not a tornado. It's just it's kind of hard to belittle it when it can cause damage, but it is just an eddy that forms typically on the leading edge of thunderstorm outflow and does not form out of the thunderstorm rotation, out of a mesocyclone that causes the rotation that we detect on radar and issue thunderstorm or tornado warnings for.
We want to, as said, to have multiple ways to get warnings. We want you to know a weather radio. We want you to have an app. We want you to have something that is going to make sound. If you need a second or tertiary way to find out what's happening, our Carolina WeatherNet will be streaming for free all night long on YouTube. So you can watch us on your phone, your TV, wherever, and get real-time warnings from the National Weather Service, radar, and sky cams. But please, I'm going to be blunt with you. It doesn't make sound. It's not going to wake you up. So make it a secondary or tertiary way to check in on the weather. And it's only going to work so long as I have power here in Charlotte. So know a weather radio, cell phone app, something that does a reverse dial, and don't be afraid to call your friends, your family, and your loved ones at 3 o'clock in the morning to wake them up, because that is a legitimate way of getting warnings. Frank is on the road. I'm looking forward next week, Frank, to hearing about some of your journeys. I know tomorrow you're going to a special event, and I'm very jealous.
That's right. We're going to the Hurricane Awareness Tour, the South Carolina State Climate Office, which is my day job. We're going to be an exhibitor there. Unfortunately, it's not open to the public. We wish it could be, but just wasn't a way to work out the logistics of hundreds or maybe thousands of people coming to visit the hurricane hunters there, Tarmac at the Charlotte Airport. So that's where it's being held, but it's an invite-only thing this time around, unfortunately. But I'm one of the people that'll be there. There'll be elected officials, emergency managers, media members, and National Weather Service people, and there's some local schools, some elementary schools that I think will be able to be there. So we're looking forward to that, and I'm looking forward to taking a tour of the Hurricane Hunters plane. I did not get a chance to do that. I was still living in Pennsylvania the last time the Hurricane Awareness Tour did a stop back in 2019, I guess, when they were in Charlotte, right? Unfortunately, I didn't get to do that, but I'm excited about my date with the Hurricane Hunter plane tomorrow.
Well, we're looking forward to next week's edition of the Carolina Weather Group, hearing about your date. If that's not a reason to subscribe, folks, I don't know what is. Also, special shout out to our Patreon supporters who help keep the lights on. Here at the Carolina Weather Group, we appreciate your continued support. Frank, thank you for hopping on, and thank you to your hotel Wi-Fi for the most part holding in. That was I very much appreciate that of the hotel Wi-Fi.
Oh no, the hotel Wi-Fi is terrible. This is cell phone Wi-Fi.
Oh, that makes a lot more sense. That makes a lot more sense. Everybody stay weather aware tonight. Stay safe. we will see you on the other side of this. And we'll continue to post updates to our social media accounts to keep you informed. But on behalf of Frank, I'm James Brierton. Thank you for joining us for the special edition of the Carolina Weather Group. We will see you back here again soon.